Keith One Time Thurman is going to get absolutely cooked by Time Tszyu. In this video, I break down the tools that Time Tszyu possesses that are going to be much too much for Keith One Time Thurman to overcome. This is your boy JG. This is the Punch Report. Let's go. Welcome back to the channel, y'all. Come in, like, subscribe, hit that bell icon to be notified of when the videos drop. Before we get into this breakdown, I want to send a special shout out to Carl Weathers and the family of Carl Weathers. You guys know him as Apollo Creed from the movie Predator, Happy Gilmore, and a long list of others. Recently passed away, as of today, at 76 years of age. So I just want to take a quick moment to shout him out. May he rest in peace to Carl Weathers and Carl Weathers and family. Let's just get into the breakdown. Keith Thurman's in trouble. I don't know how else to really say that other than he's going to get his ass kicked and a bunch of other stuff I could say. Before I get into the boxing aspects, I want to go over just a brief history of how we arrived at this point. Right now, as we speak, Time Tszyu has a lot of momentum. He just came off a complete demolition of Brian Mendoza. Brian Mendoza was a guy who came in, had a lot of momentum. He beat Jason Rosarios and then brutally knocked out the towering inferno, Sebastian Fundora, with an overhand left, I believe. Just a beautiful shot. We'll stick it up here in the clips. And this is a guy with a lot of confidence coming in. He faced Time Tszyu coming off the Tony Harrison bout, which we'll get into a little bit later. And he just absolutely brutalized this dude in a manner that almost looked unfair. Time Tszyu, in my opinion, he had the Tony Harrison stoppage, but the demolition of Brian Mendoza, who did go the distance and make it to the final bell, was far more impressive because I think that Brian Mendoza was far more of a physical specimen, a little faster handed, and believe it or not, had more tools than a Tony Harrison before Tony Harrison got to that point, because I think Harrison looked good against Charlo in both bouts before he got stopped in the second one. Keith One Time Thurman, he's been on the shelf since he last fought against Mario Barrios, a fight that also went the distance. He won unanimous decision. Barrios was coming off the knockout loss to Gervonta Tank Davis at 140 pounds, moved up to 47 to fight Keith One Time Thurman. Side note for Mario Barrios, success in his next bout against, who was my man? Your Dennis Ugas, and able to get it done. Keith One Time Thurman, I guess it's going to be, or I think it's going to be over a year since he's seen action, and he's going up against a guy who, and Time Tszyu, has tremendous momentum and a really, really clean and violent fighting style. So let's just get into the issues that are inherent when you think about Keith Thurman. And some of these things will not be a surprise. Those of you who follow the sport of boxing, especially in the welterweight division where he primarily campaigned, this fight will be at 54, know some of these things about Keith One Time Thurman. But what ends up happening is it ends up being magnified when you fight a guy who's a legitimate, dangerous puncher. And dangerous might be understating it when you think about Time Tszyu. Keith One Time Thurman has a durability issue. Luis Collazo, Josecito Lopez, Manny Pacquiao dropped him and hurt him viciously to the body. Let's take a look at this body shot here too, because this is part of the issue with Keith One Time Thurman. You see the body shot. Manny Pacquiao sneaks it in off to that far side. You see Keith Thurman double over in pain. He manages to survive, but as he started to build momentum after the knockdown in this particular bout, Manny Pacquiao steals that away by putting in vicious work to the body. Keith Thurman is known to be very susceptible to the body, and Time Tszyu, with his precision punching and his relentless style and his patient style, will have no issue finding a home for either the left or right hand to the body. That's just one of the issues that Keith Thurman faces fighting a fighter like Time Tszyu and being vulnerable for such a long time to the body. Now, the body is just one of those things where it pops out a little bit more, but even to the chin strap, we've seen Keith Thurman get knocked around. And I know before you guys even come at me, well, it's boxing and people get hit and yada yada. I understand and I get it. At the highest levels of professional prize fighting, at some point in time, you got to show you can take it. Now, yeah, he can take it for the most part, but he's going up to 54, fighting a guy that's a notable puncher who can also box, has an aggressive fighting style, pressure style, and puts a lot of damage on his opposition, which we'll take a look at here in a moment. Moving on, another thing that concerns me about Keith Thurman going into this bout in particular is the time away from the ring. I've already mentioned this. He fought Mario Barrios coming off a loss, coming up to 47 from 40. And now he's going into about 154 against the champion with a bunch of momentum. And he has not seen ring time. Now, layoffs are not an unusual thing for a Keith Thurman. But as you get up there in age and you're fighting younger guys and guys that are in bigger weight classes who are really filled out, pause at 154, you're going to run into inherent issues from a physical application perspective. Lastly, for me, when I think about Keith Thurman and some of the issues that he's going to face fighting Time Tszyu, he's in a new weight class where Time Tszyu's an established champion who's flirting with the idea of the Bud Crawfords and the bigger names in the division at 154 pounds. Charlo obviously there as well. Keith Thurman's coming into this party a little bit late and cold. It's just, it's looking like it's tailor-made for Time Tszyu to get this done. Now that we've checked those boxes, Keith Thurman, these are the things that you're really stacking up against before I even get into how the styles mesh. If I go over to Time Tszyu, the first thing I want to talk about and highlight here is his power. Now let's take a look at some of the clips here. We've mentioned before in professional prize fighting, people get hit, they take shots. If you look at this bout, this is between him and Brian Mendoza, who I mentioned also had a lot of momentum coming into this bout. As you see these shots land, you can tell that's affecting Brian Mendoza's ability to think intelligently in those moments where you got to react and throw heat back. He starts off very active. He changes levels very well, upstairs, downstairs. But as he wears each shot as they land, Brian Mendoza's fighting style will start to change. And that's the mark of a really, really thudding power. You have the Deontay Wilder power where you can turn a guy's lights off, no problem. But when you can start punching guys and changing their fighting style inherently, Brian Mendoza, yes, was put in a position early in this bout where he was seeing success, start to slow down his output, start to really kind of shell up and get desperate before he really started wearing significant amounts of damage and then looking crazy towards the end of that fight and eventually at the end of the fight. Additionally, if you look at the accuracy of a Time Tszyu, we're going to do a combo of the Brian Mendoza fight and the Tony Harrison fight. First, looking at the Brian Mendoza fight, you see Brian Mendoza here. He has a high guard, and Time Tszyu's variety in his right hand allows him to sneak it in, and just the only spot it can go off that right hand side, cracking Brian Mendoza and stunning him for just a moment. And that just highlights the accuracy and the precision in which these strikes are landing. Now, if we go over to the Tony Harrison highlights, Tony Harrison at this point is already in trouble. You see the patience, and like I said before, you see the accuracy in the punching for Time Tszyu, not to waste anything, to ensure that everything that he can get, everything that he can land can be damaging. You take this and you put it up against the fact that Keith Thurman has been inactive, he's been out of the ring, and he's shown to be very durable, both upstairs, or excuse me, have durability issues both upstairs and downstairs. The precision punching, along with the power that I just mentioned of a Time Tszyu, will be a significant issue and hurdle for for Keith Thurman to have to overcome, one that I personally think is going to be much too much. And finally, when I think about Time Tszyu and what he brings to the table that's going to make it difficult, he has a very, very sound defense. Take a look at the clips here. The ability to catch shots with the gloves without wasting space and not taking himself out of range offensively while having a sound, strategic, and basic fundamental defense. Keith Thurman, who is a very athletic guy, lateral movement is going to be a key for him, but Time Tszyu tends to take that away with the pressure that he applies, both with his feet, with his presence, the ability to close range, and then landing heavy shots. Keith Thurman will rely on his athleticism. He doesn't really have a choice. Will his power, the power that we know Keith Thurman possesses at 147, transfer up? Even if it does, I don't think it matters. Brian Mendoza has good crack and good hand speed, not as athletic as Keith Thurman, and was really unable to keep Time Tszyu off of him. I would say that Keith Thurman's a little more athletic than a Brian Mendoza, but not so much so that I think that it's going to make that much of a difference. If I can find him, I'll stick him in the video, but some photos dropped a little bit earlier of Keith Thurman. He looks to be in incredible shape. Time Tszyu's a big guy for 154. His power is going to be there. It's going to remain. I don't see the way that Keith Thurman can get this done. If I had to break down a way for Keith Thurman to possibly get a victory in this particular bout, he has to stick and move, box, use his jab, use his movement, live on the outside, get combinations when he can. But if he gets in a scenario like this, and I want to put this one, this is early in the fight for Mario Barrios and Keith Thurman, where we're in the pocket and we're exchanging, we're both throwing combinations. If this is the route he wants to go with Tim Tszyu, I do not see it going well. Tim Tszyu's too active of a puncher, good responsible defense. You don't see him get lumped up, just kind of beat on, so to speak. This is not going to go well for one Keith One Thurman. Let me know what you guys are thinking in this particular bout. This is your boy JG. This has been the Punch Report. Remember, like, subscribe, hit that bell icon to be notified of the latest race, and we out.